How's it going, everybody? Chadley here, and welcome back to another New World video. We are finally just a week and a half away from the full release of New World. So here on this channel, I'm just going to be releasing a bunch of videos to help you guys get prepped for the full release. So for today's video, I'm going to be going through each of the different weapon types and breaking down if you should be using this weapon or not, seeing if it's right for you. If you guys haven't played any of the betas and you haven't jumped in with any of the different weapon types, hopefully this video will give you guys some insight on which one to pick and best suit your play style. There's obviously a bunch of different weapon types in here, so I'm going to try to keep this short and succinct for each of the different types and just give you guys a general overview of each. If you guys want to look at any of the things that I'm looking at here in this video for yourself, I'll have a link to this page down below. Also, we're going to be starting off with the one-handed weapons, moving into two-handed, ranged, and finally magic, and I will have timestamps for each of the different weapon types down below in the description. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the straight sword. So the sword is going to be for those of you who just want to be on the front lines, absorbing all the damage and taking all the aggro from all the different enemies, and also buffing your allies in different ways, whether that's through defense or offensive abilities. I personally think the defender side of this weapon type is the most important because with this side, you can draw aggro. So shield bash and also defiant stance. If you guys have a carnelian gem on your sword, you're going to be able to draw aggro, which is huge for your team. There's different expeditions that I find this very, very useful. Just being able to turn the boss around or take a large group of enemies away from your healers is very, very huge because in this game, there is a threat system. So the more damage you do or the more healing you put out, you get different levels of threat. So having these taunts are huge for keeping more of your squishy team members alive. So you're really going to need to be focusing on these taunts. And if you guys are interested in any sort of like PvP and war aspects, I've seen many sword and shield people just sitting on the front lines and pretty much they never die, especially if they have a pocket healer. You will just be absorbing everything and taking all the aggro from the enemy team. So in my opinion, I think sword and shield is one of the most important classes in the entire game. And then if you guys are interested in picking up this weapon type, you guys are going to want to focus in strength, and also dexterity can help as well. But overall, if you like to help out your allies and just take all of the damage on the front lines, this is going to be the weapon type for you. Now moving over to the Rapier, this class is all about being mobile and then also getting in, dealing a lot of damage quickly, applying dots, and then getting out with that mobility. With this class, you're going to be able to pick your fights on your terms and then just decide when you want to disengage if you need to, because this whole gray side is about mobility. You get evade, you get fletch, and also reposit. And then over on the blood side, you guys are going to be applying those different bleeds and then have different effects with it. So flourish and finish. You guys are going to consume that bleed and just deal extra damage with it, which is very cool. So that's a cool synergy between these two skills. And also flurry is just a lot of light attacks very quickly and overall deals a lot of damage in a short amount of time. So if you guys are interested in picking up the Rapier, you're going to want to be focusing into dexterity, but also intelligence can help with it as well. But yeah, overall, if you're somebody who likes to be mobile and pick off the weak enemies, the Rapier is going to be the weapon for you. Now on to the last of the one-handed weapons. We're going to be looking at the Hatchet. This is a very versatile class. You can have tankiness, you can have the high damage melee, and also have ranged in there as well. It kind of just depends what tree you end up going down. Also, you can be incredibly mobile with this class as well. So this class pretty much has everything. So if you're somebody who just wants an overall versatile weapon type, the Hatchet is going to be the one for you. Berserk is honestly one of the craziest skills for any of the different weapon types in the entire game. This allows you to do everything, increases your damage, and as you invest more into it, you get movement speed, your attacks aren't able to be interrupted, and you can't be staggered. So like overall, this thing is insane. If you're somebody who just likes to get into the front lines and go nuts, the Hatchet is going to be the class for you. Now, if you guys do end up picking this, you're going to want to be focusing into strength, and also dexterity can help as well. Now moving on over to the first of the two-handed weapons, we're going to be looking at the Spear. This weapon class is going to allow you guys to kind of pick engagements on your own terms. You can do ranged with it. You can actually throw the spear with javelin, and then otherwise you get a lot of CC out of this, and overall just the furthest reach on any of the melee, so it's going to be harder for enemies to hit you. Another cool thing with the spear is you can apply debuffs to the different enemies. So for example, Perforate here is going to apply Rend, which is going to decrease the target's damage absorption by 5% for 10 seconds. And Rend is actually a really good skill. There are couple different weapons that can do it, but it really does overall help your team damage output. Yeah, overall, if you're somebody who likes to sit at a distance, apply crowd control and debuffs to the enemies, this is going to be the class for you. And if you guys are interested in the spear, your attributes should be focusing in dexterity, and also strength can help as well. Now moving on over to one of my favorite weapon types in the entire game, the Great Axe. This weapon type can deal some of the highest damage in the entire game with the Reaper skill tree, and also you get crazy AoE crowd control with the Mauler skill tree. But yeah, I'm not kidding when I say this class can deal some crazy damage. Just for example, here in the Reaper skill tree, if we go ahead and look at the capstone, you move 30% faster and deal 15% more damage when looking at a foe within 15 meters. So like, this class, you're just all about hunting down enemies and just finishing them as quick as humanly possible. And overall, combine that with like charge. This allows you guys to have some of the best movement in the entire game as well. And then at the end of it, you get to deal damage. It's crazy how versatile and good the Great Axe is. I believe this was probably the most popular weapon type in the entire game. Usually everybody I saw was running a Great Axe, which is kind of crazy. This thing in war is nuts. I've seen people easily lead their teams in terms of damage and kills just using their Great Axe. And then when you combine that crazy damage with the AoE of like, say, Gravity Well, which pulls enemies into the center of this like vortex, you guys can just control the entire battlefield and wipe entire squads with ease. So if that sounds like something you guys want to be doing, definitely pick up the Great Axe. And if you guys are using this, make sure you put all of your attribute points into strength. You guys are going to be dealing unreal amounts of damage. Now moving on over to one of the other popular two-handed weapons, the Warhammer. This is all about dealing pretty good amounts of damage in terms of AoE, and then also applying a ton of crowd control effects. This thing, you're just constantly going to be doing AoE damage and also stunning enemies and preventing them from doing pretty much anything. A very popular combo is to combine the Great Axe with the Warhammer, as they do complement each other in terms of the different damage types. So if you're running into enemies who kind of resist the slash damage from the Great Axe, you're going to want to pull out your Warhammer and you're going to be dealing a lot of damage to them. And then overall, just that two as a combo is devastating. Taking this thing into war is also pretty nuts, because you can just dive in and prevent enemies from moving and allow your team to easily pick them off. But if this sounds like a weapon that you want to use, you're also going to want to be investing into the strength attribute. And we're finally on over to the different ranged weapons in the game. So starting off with the bow, this is probably the one that I used the least in the betas. But overall, the bow in this game is pretty much like the bow in many other games. You're going to be able to just pick enemies off from a distance. You can apply poison clouds with a poison arrow. You can hit AoE in terms of like rain of arrows. Also, you can shoot through enemies with one of the abilities, which is really cool. There's really not too much to say about the bow. Like I said, it's pretty much like all the other bows in different games that you've ever played. So if you are that ranger, definitely pick up the bow. And if you guys do pick it up, make sure you are putting your attribute points into dexterity. Now, the final ranged weapon, the musket, this thing can be nuts for mainly PvP. I didn't see a lot of people using it in terms of PvE content. I'm sure you can do it, but this definitely seemed like more of a PvP focused weapon. Really, the only downside to this in terms of PvP was the connection in the game. If it was ever lagging, it was pretty tough to hit shots because people would be moving very weird, and you obviously got to hit your headshots to get different kills. But honestly, if you and your friends ran just like a firing squad of muskets, you guys could probably do some pretty nasty things in terms of PvP. If you just team shot different people, they're going to instantly die from a range, and they're going to have no idea what hit them. There is also the trapper side of the musket, which is pretty cool. So you guys can place the different traps around and just play a zone and take advantage of the different traps and the CC that they can cause to the enemies. For example, you can put the traps right here into a choke point, and when an enemy walks there, they're just going to be stuck there for 3 seconds. You can line up that easy headshot and take them out. But with the musket, I would pair it with a melee weapon, so you always have something to fall back on in case something goes wrong or enemies get too close. But otherwise, if the musket does sound like something you're interested in, make sure you put your points into dexterity, and also intelligence can help it as well. And we're finally into the last type of weapons in the game, and that's our magic weapons. So starting off with the fire staff, this is personally my favorite weapon type in the entire game for both PvE and PvP content. I personally think the fire staff can do the highest damage in the entire game, and the best part is that it's ranged as well. so you stay completely safe while dealing crazy amounts of damage to both single target and groups. Another really nice part about it is if you guys focus on the Fire Mage skill tree, you'll have enough points left over once you're at high enough mastery to also get some mobility as well. You guys can pick up Burnout, which is fantastic for getting around the map and getting out of sticky situations. Use this pretty much all the time. Combine that with Fireball and Pillar of Fire, and the amount of damage you guys can do is insane. I led damage in 2 different wars using the Fire Staff, so the potential is seriously there. Also, if you get a group of you guys running the Fire Staff, if you use Runes of Helios down here, the capstone for the Fire Mage tree, you're going to put these fire runes on the ground, which increase your spell damage by 30%, which is a hefty amount. You guys can just chain these together and just always pretty much have this 30% boost, and it's just disgusting the damage you can put out. Yeah, if you want to be a badass mage baller, definitely pick up the Fire Staff, and if you do, make sure you put all of your points into intelligence, and you're going to be hitting some crazy damage numbers. Now, moving over to the Life Staff, I actually made a video during the closed beta pretty much saying that everybody should have the Life Staff leveled up to some degree, because I think this is personally one of the best secondary weapons you can use in the entire game. Now, no matter what weapon type you pick, so say you pick the sword or the great axe, if you combine it with a Life Staff, you guys can be the tankiest thing known to man. If you guys are doing any sort of duels, you pretty much will never lose. I personally had a friend who went full Life Staff, and you could not beat him in a one-on-one. He would just out heal all the damage that you do, and he'd just pick you off over time. So personally, I think the Life Staff is one of the best weapons in the entire game. Also, the more people who run it, the more the threat is going to be spread out amongst your group. So if you only have one person using the Life Staff, pretty much all the enemies on the map are going to be targeting that healer. So if you guys can spread out that threat, if you don't have somebody taunting, is going to be huge, and it's going to help out your entire squad get through the content. Now, pretty much the biggest downfall of the Life Staff is that it's the only weapon that benefits from focus, and it only benefits from focus. So if you guys do want to get really good healing out of this, you are going to have to take away a little bit from your main weapon type. But honestly, with just like say 50 points into focus, which is really not hard to do at all, and you pretty much don't take away anything from your main weapon, you get really good healing. And also it makes you guys rely less on food. So going between different quests and things like that, you can just heal up and then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about going back to a settlement, making food, and then continuing on. Yeah, overall, I think everybody should use the Life Staff in some degree, but if you also just want to be that full-blown healer, definitely pick up the Life Staff. And we have finally made it to the final weapon type in New World. Now, we're going to be talking about the Ice Gauntlet. Personally, this was one of the weapon types that I was most excited about, but if I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys, I was kind of the most let down by this weapon type as well. Out of all 6 skills, there's really only one that I like, and that is Ice Storm. I think everything else needs some sort of rework or a buff to it, because they are really difficult to use and don't really do that much damage, but Ice Storm is really good. I would actually combine this with my Fire Staff in wars, because you could put Ice Storm on the enemies and debuff them and make them take more damage, and then you just go in with your AoE Fire Staff, and you guys could just absolutely nuke whole hordes of enemies. The Ice Pylon skill is actually really cool, but it just requires a lot of investment, and I personally think the Ice Tempest side is a lot better, especially with its Capstone Ultimate Chill. Ice abilities chill targets, increasing ice damage by 35% for 3 seconds. So combine that with Ice Storm, you guys can do a lot of damage to a lot of different enemies at one time. But for an example, why I think some of these skills need to be reworked, like say Ice Spikes can actually do fairly decent damage, but it is so difficult to make it deal its full potential in damage, because it's going to send out a wave of spikes that deal a little bit of your weapon damage, but then there's going to be a mighty spike at the end that deals a lot more damage. You can also cancel this on its way out and make the mighty spike appear wherever it is as it's going out. But honestly, it's so difficult to hit that mighty spike. It's not really worth it. And that's just kind of the case with a lot of these different things like Ice Shower and Wind Chill. They don't really do any sort of damage or provide enough utility out of them either to make them really worth it. The only other skill that I enjoy is Entombed, because it can get you out of sticky situations and just buy you time for your teammates to bail you out. But overall, if you guys want to be freezing your targets and also debuffing them as well, the Ice Gauntlet is going to be the weapon for you, and this is going to benefit solely from intelligence. Yeah, that is going to wrap up our breakdown of all the different weapon types in New World. Hopefully this gave you some insight on which to pick if you have been unsure. But to be honest, there's really no bad choice in New World. All of the different weapons can do everything in the game if you practice with them and just make a correct build for them. In case you guys are wondering which are the best, personally I would say Fire Staff, Life Staff, Great Axe, and Warhammer are probably your top 4 in the game, and then overall for tanks, Straight Sword is by far the best. By the way, I'm sorry that there wasn't really any gameplay to go with these different weapon types. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the game because the beta is not going on and the full game's not out yet, so I can't really provide gameplay for each of these. But nonetheless, hopefully this video helped you guys out. If this did help you out and you found it enjoyable, make sure to leave a thumbs up on the video to let me know. It really does help me out. Also consider subscribing for more New World content. Anyways, I can't wait for the launch of New World, and I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.